Professor Pulver here. We're going to talk about conflict perspective, which is one of the major theories in sociology. And in the presentation on functionalism, we discussed the idea of macro-level analysis and how it might differ from micro-level analysis. We now turn to this other macro-level theory, which is known as the conflict perspective or conflict theory. The father of this perspective is actually Karl Marx, who you probably know more by being the author of the Communist Manifesto along with Friedrich Engels. Once again, from this perspective, we are looking down from the airplane, but what we see this time are very different things. As a matter of fact, many people feel it is kind of the opposite of functionalist perspective. So, what do we see? Perhaps a definition will help us. We define conflict perspective by saying that societies are always marked by conflict, particularly between a dominant group and a subordinate group, and that conflict is a fact of life and the key to change. And so when we look down as a conflict theorist, we see that society is a system where competing interest groups are accommodating to each other. We are very much aware of this perspective of the difference in power between different groups and between different people. We also recognize that the social system may at any time become unbalanced. Not balanced and cooperative like we saw in functionalist theory, but unbalanced because of shifts in power. As we contemplate, for example, an upcoming election for President of the United States to take place in 2012, we realize that whoever holds that position wields power, and a change in the holder of the office can shift the power itself in different directions. Likewise, if you have a change in a dictator, or a change in any kind of political organization, you have a change in everything that flows from that. So, conflict theorists say that the parts of society that you look down upon from the airplane don't really fit together harmoniously. They really are in competition with each other. They are unstable and are likely to change, and sometimes rapidly. It is important to remember when looking at these views by sociologists that we are not necessarily looking for the one true perspective and rejecting others as false, but rather we are looking for what we can learn through the eyes of each of these perspectives that we cover. You might say that we are looking at something from different angles, but we are looking at the same social interaction. Now, back to the conflict theorists. They point out something that makes intuitive sense to us, which is this. Social life involves conflict because different people, different groups, have different goals and needs. When you think about it, this makes sense, doesn't it? Conflict sociologists are concerned with who is benefiting from any particular social arrangement. Remember, if you have a particular piece of land and it is worth a lot of money, are you going to want to give it up? Because you have a wonderful amount of equity in that land. If you have on your side of the border considerable oil or other precious resources, would you want to change that border and give it to somebody else? No. In this slide you see a road with windmills on the right. Pretend that the road represents the border between two countries, but the wind only blows on the right side of the road, and thus only the country which possesses the land on the right side of the picture can benefit from the wind turbines. Do you think maybe the one country would like the road border to be in a different place? Wouldn't they like to be the one who owned the benefit of the wind turbines? If you have considerable influence, if you have the ability to get what you want, are you going to want to give that to somebody else? No. You're not going to want to give that to somebody else. And so we are always looking, as long as we can keep certain arrangements with certain people, we can keep certain things going the way we want them to go. So, we are always looking as a conflict theorist at what is happening between the groups. Most of the time, then, in this view, social order is achieved through coercion, the use of power and influence, and even force and brute strength. When you attempt to come up with some words or concepts that can reinforce the idea of this theory, you might say groups are competitive with one another. If you are on the bottom and you don't like something that is going on with people in power, you can have a revolution, or stage a riot, or march on the U.S. Capitol or any other place. Sometimes you could get involved in a turf war. Anytime you're dealing with a situation with people where people are fighting over the use of land, or who is going to get to do what, who's going to have what position, who is going to have what status, who is going to get what privilege, or keeping what privilege, we are then seeing things through the eyes of a conflict perspective. And remember, if we have a privilege, we really want to protect that privilege. Why would we want to give that up? We really like it. As a matter of fact, sometimes we might think that even if we kind of smash people as we go up the pecking order, or perhaps we step on them, or whatever we have to do to get where we want to go, even this is what we will do. Money is a big part of this. Being a member of an aristocracy or a powerful group is part of this. Having property is an enormous advantage. So in addition, we also see minority groups in conflict with the dominant groups. We see exploitation, we see domestic violence between men and women. Men are often larger, often stronger, and they sometimes just push their weight around and exploit their partners, and even their children, in the name of the fact that they feel they have more strength, or that they should have more power. So that is how we see things when we are looking at things from the conflict perspective. And this is the second of our macro level perspectives. In another presentation, I will discuss feminist theoretical ideas, which some have felt belongs as a subset to the conflict perspective we have just discussed. I will let you determine if you agree when you watch the presentation. Goodbye for now.